hello, and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy podcast studio and are super excited to have another fellow Washingtonian on our podcast today, PJ Glassey. Welcome to our show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so you specialize in exercise, and you say that we don't have to spend hours and hours and hours in the gym a week to get results. So tell us about that.
That's right. So traditional training was invented back in 1891 by Eugene Sandow, famous European strongman, and he invented the sets and reps method that everybody's doing. And so most people are still doing that. It's really time consuming because you do a set and then you have to rest for a while, and then you do another set and you rest for a while, another set. And so, an hour's gone by minimum or more if you're more advanced. And what I developed was a system for people that don't have that kind of time. Now, it's perfect if you're a bodybuilder and you want to get jacked and huge. But for people that don't want to bulk up and just want to be defined and toned, that doesn't take that much time. And science has shown us with lots of studies since 1891 that we don't have to spend that kind of time and we can do it differently. And there are certain things like time under tension and complete muscle fatigue that make it easier to get a workout in. Ours takes 21 minutes and it's just twice a week. And that's equivalent to about 7 hours of traditional training because it gives people endurance and strength and all the toning and defining that they want. So they look and feel like a fit person, but they don't have to spend all that time to do traditional training, and they don't get jacked because most people don't want to get big and bulky anymore. They just want to look and feel fit, and they don't want to spend a whole lot of time in the gym. But, like I said, the traditional training is perfect for people that do want to get jacked. So they can do that, and, Gold's Gym and those places. And it's great to have the social connection with all their other bodybuilder friends and all that kind of stuff. And they spend a lot of time there, and it's great for them. So we're certainly not for everybody, but we are for the busy people that want to get functionally fit and just don't want to spend a whole lot of time in the gym.
I love everything that you said, and I agree 100%. Now, my main focus is when it comes to training is I'm a mountain bike racer and endurance mountain bike racer. So I do a lot of training on the bike.
Yeah.
But I still do gym workouts, and 2 to a maximum of 3 a week and 20 to 30 minutes at a time.
Yep.
I think people listening are probably going to say, go ahead and stream his site. So this is you, correct, PJ?
Yeah.
Right. So I think people are going to, be skeptical of what you're saying, that you can look like that and only work out in the gym twice a week, 20 minutes at a time.
Of course.
And I know that it is possible. First of all, your diet's on point. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
You can't exercise your way out of a bad diet.
Right.
But it doesn't take hours and hours. So, and I'm with you. If you're not a bodybuilder, you're not a power lifter, as little rest between sets as possible. I mean, and just, and I know on our workouts, my wife does gym workouts with me. After 7 or 8 sets of stuff, and you're doing 15-second rest between, maybe less.
Yeah.
I mean, you're cooked after 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of versions of these short workouts that people are doing and different gyms. We started in 1998, so we're kind of the OG of it. But, since then we've gotten a lot of other gyms that have done these short workouts, and it's kind of like you describe. It's condensing traditional training into just less time. So there's less time and less rests between sets. And so you go into the next set kind of exhausted from the previous set because you didn't have enough recovery. You can get it done in half an hour instead of an hour, but it's really intense and it's still traditional reps. And nothing is really to complete muscle failure like we do.
Yeah.
And that's kind of part of our secret sauce. So half of it is the time under tension, where you're staying in contraction and not resting at all, including the tiny rests between the reps. So if you look at somebody doing a traditional training standing bicep curl, they're going to be doing pretty fast ballistic reps, and they're going to build momentum going up. So at the top of the range, when they head back down and change direction, there's no contracting going on because the momentum carries it through the top. And then when they head back down, their muscle is actually relaxing at that moment, at the apex of that range of motion. And all it takes is a quarter second for the muscle cell to refuel. So essentially, they're refueling between every rep. So for strength, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But for endurance, it's lousy because you're refueling between every rep. And then you need to have another couple of minutes between every set to refuel. And so our time under tension doesn't allow for any rests, even a quarter second. So we don't go fast. We're going controlled motions, kind of like Tai Chi, but with resistance. So bands or carpet sliders or weights or light weights. But it has to be light weights because each exercise is 2 to 3 minutes of constant time under tension, as opposed to 15 seconds of quick reps like traditional training. So it's a whole different world. And you can probably imagine that staying in that time under tension without any rests for 2 to 3 minutes, at the end, you're cooked and you cannot lift that same weight. It felt light when you started, but it sure doesn't after two
Yeah.
to 3 minutes. And so then you reach complete muscle fatigue, which is strength training. Because when you reach complete muscle fatigue, that means that muscle cell, just speaking on an individual cell basis, that cell has run out of fuel and it can't contract anymore. So because it's emptied out the tank and it failed, then it says, gosh, I'm going to have to change because I couldn't do that. But if someone were to quit before that, where they still could do the last rep, then the muscle cell says, oh, I'm good. I could do it. Why change? It won't change unless it has to. So we're just showing the muscle cell that it needs to change. And with traditional training, where you're doing sub maximal and you're not reaching failure at the end of the set, maybe the last set, if you're pushing really hard, but not the ones leading up to it, which is perfect, by the way, for bulking up. So if people want that, they should do that. But if they don't, if they want to get toned and defined instead and not necessarily bigger, then they would be better suited for this time under tension.
So Janet, I bet you have some questions or comments.
Well, I do, because as we age, we all know that balance becomes an issue for all of us. So the core of our body, I find, at least for myself, is something that I need to focus on a
Mm.
lot more than when I was in my 20s or 30s.
Yeah.
So how does this focus on those kind of things for people? Because what we want to do is prevent people from falling as we age. We
Yeah.
want them to be able to respond. So how does this fit in with that?
It fits in so well that we have tons of people in their 80s and 90s that are members at XGym because we are mindful movements. It's functional training. And because we're not doing fast reps with ballistic motions, we're doing controlled reps. And so people say it's kind of like Tai Chi, it's kind of like Pilates, it's kind of like bar, but it's really not similar to any of those. It's really hard to describe because it's a methodology with 7 different methods and 30 different splinter techniques that we develop based on the research. So it's an own unique thing, but it's very functional, very controlled. So people get more coordinated with this
Mhm.
style of training. And that is half of the not falling part is coordinated. Your nerves have to be able to react. Everybody trips. Whether you're a toddler, teenager, adult, or old person, you're going to trip. It's just a matter of being able to catch yourself that determines if you're going to fall or not. And the catching yourself part is 2 parts. It's what I just mentioned, the coordination, the nerves, nerve reaction time, and number 2, strength. So a weak person is going to move slower. A weak muscle moves slower. A strong muscle moves faster. And then you put that with the coordination. And then when you trip, you can get your foot out in front of you and catch yourself, as opposed to someone who is weaker that moves slower. They can't get their foot there in time, and then they go all the way down to the ground. So that's the problem with the falls. Anybody can be really good at preventing falls. No one is better at preventing trips because, as I said, everybody does that. We all do that, but we don't notice it. It's the people who are too weak to catch themselves that
Yep.
notice it because they go all the way down.
So I love the term functional training. I was talking about this. My two boys. I have two boys that are men, 23 and 25, and they do regular gym work. And they just mentioned to me they're big, 220 and 200 pounds. But they've even mentioned to me at their age that they want to start going to the gym to be, not to get as strong as they can or get as big as they can, but just to be fit and to move functionally. And
Yeah.
obviously, as you get older, those things get more important. And I'm all about functional training because, I look at it like this. If you can do a box jump, then that probably means you've got a lot less risk of falling, right?
Yeah.
So if you train things like that, then walking becomes easier. So tell us more about what you consider functional training. What does that mean to you?
Well, to develop it is mindful movements. So it's paying attention. When you look at the traditional training, your average bodybuilder, he can do his reps in the gym, talking to a friend or watching the TV. He's just getting his reps and sets in. And it's perfect for what he's doing. But then when you slow down and you concentrate on the time or on the direction of movement or the range of motion, and that's why we have 7 different methods. So one is slow motion, another one is isometric, stopping in the middle of the range. Another is like tiered, where you're going to up 2 inches, down 1 inch. Another is fast up, but tiered on the way down. And you're moving in different planes of motion. And so, because they're so focused, you have to pay attention. And we're not talking about, because I used to do traditional training, 30 years ago. And people, we had time between sets and stuff, and even during a set or during a rep, to talk about life. And the personal trainer kind of turns into being a life coach or a counselor of sorts.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't have time for any of that because we're coaching while they're through every rep, through every range of motion, and helping them stay mindful and focusing on their movement and their body. It's actually a form of meditation because you're so focused on what you're doing. It's really good for your brain, especially your prefrontal cortex, because you're concentrating so hard. And that's all meditation is just focusing on something. And so we're not talking about life or counseling them on their relationships or anything like that, like other trainers do, because we have 21 minutes and we're working hard and focusing, concentrating the entire 21 minutes. And the only time that we have between exercises is the time it takes to get to the next exercise and set that up and get that going. And so we're not sitting and resting and chatting. And it's just a whole different world. But that's what functional training is. The bottom line is mindful movements, is that your brain is in it and you're focusing, concentrating on your movement, which helps improve coordination. So that's why we have our golfers, for instance. They'll be with us and they're training, and 3 months into their membership, they're like, "Hey, what's really funny? I was golfing in the 90s and now I'm golfing in the 80s, but I haven't changed anything. What gives?" And I just tell them that's because you're more in control of your body. You're more coordinated. We've trained your nerves and your focus. So that explains it. And a lot of other sports too, but it's the mindful movement, and the functional training results let you enjoy life outside the gym. So then you say, "Hey, I'm 60 years old and I stand up paddleboarding looks fun. Let's go
Right.
down to the beach and try it." So instead of being a normie and falling in 100 times on your first session, you just stand up and you start paddling, just like somebody who's done it before on your first time, because you're more coordinated and you're more in charge of your body and in control of your motions.
It makes everything easier. That's why I like functional
Mhm.
training. It just makes life easier. That's makes you function in life easier. That's why it's called functional training.
Yep.
So 2 workouts a week.
Mhm.
Are both workouts the same? Are they both full body? Go into that a little bit.
Yeah, for the one-on-one members, we're doing a specific number of exercises. They're compound movements, so it's usually only 5 to 7 exercises for
Yeah.
that 21 minutes, but it's using a particular method, so you're doing the rep a certain way. And then 14 workouts later, we switch the method and the exercises. So traditional training is really good at switching exercises from time to time. I don't know if usually not that frequently. It's usually longer than 14 workouts. But they don't change the way that you're doing the rep. So we're changing that because then it gives the nerves something new to think about. And so it's really hard to adapt when you're changing the exercises and the nerves every 14 workouts or to plateau because the nerves are learning something new and the muscles are doing something new and the brain is doing something new frequently. Now, the reason it's 14 workouts is because that takes about 7 weeks. And research shows that after about 6 weeks of a particular routine, the body hasn't adapted, but the brain starts getting bored. And when the brain starts getting bored, it's hard to put 100% intensity into it. But that's what we need from people. Now, the other reason we do it every 7 weeks or 14 workouts is because there's a process called nerve innervation that has to run its course before hypertrophy or bulking can happen. And so anytime somebody starts a new program, especially like on January 1st, the New Year's resolutionaries, I call them, start, they pack the gyms and they're starting their routines and they haven't worked out for 9 months since last year when they made their New Year's
Right.
resolution. So they it's a new routine and they don't bulk up for about 2 months because their nerve innervation phase has to run its course first if they're trying to bulk up. And then they start to see that happening. They'll notice muscle tone and density happening and maybe a little bit of change, but they have to keep doing that routine. And then about 2 months in, on average, or a month and a half for some, 6 weeks, but you'll really notice it at 2 months, 8 weeks. Then you start seeing it in the mirror. And so what we're trying to do is to stay out of the bulking phase. We want the toning and defining and density phase. We don't want the muscle bulking phase. So our program is specifically designed so people don't get bigger. They get more defined. So that's why we stay out of the bulking phase by switching it every 7 weeks. So they're spending all their time in the innervation phase, which also does include density and toning and definition, but not bulking.
Well, and in reality, most people, you already mentioned bodybuilders, and you could throw powerlifters in there.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of those influencers out there.
Yeah.
But in general, I think most people just want to be toned and fit. That's really,
Mhm.
and be able to function day to day in life.
Yeah.
And that's what these kind of workouts do. So,
Right.
Janet, what other questions do you have for PJ?
Um, well, it from a woman's perspective, I guess we see a lot of women going through peri and menopausal and some changes. So I'm always concerned about people's bones. So talk a
Mhm.
little bit about how this works for them because I always advocate for them to do some resistance training.
Mhm.
Um, because we know that bones aren't stationary. I mean, they're a living part of our body. We need to do something for them to maintain that health.
Yeah. Yeah. So the biggest part of our bell curve is 40 to 70 years old, because those are the busy people, and about 60% women. So we are very familiar with that phase of life. In fact, on November 22nd, we're having a party with a doctor that specializes in midlife for women health. And so she's going to be, Q&A time and getting together and talking about stuff. But we do a lot of specialized programs for that. And just exercise, even walking is going to help. It's a matter of just moving. But the more resistance you can put on a bone, the better. So we have a vibration platform that's kind of a cheat code for that. And the whole body vibration makes the body think that it's, when you're standing on that platform, that it's standing on Jupiter. So it turns up the gravity essentially. And so without having to lift really heavy weights, you can get on that platform and get the benefits instead of putting a big heavy barbell on your back for heavy squats, which would help with bone density, but could be a risk in injuries. We can do those squats, body weight squats, or just light dumbbells on this platform. And we also have a machine called the Extreme machine, is what we named it because we invented it. And it is a cable machine with arms that move in different positions. So you can do tons of different exercises. But we took the weight stack out of it and we put an electric winch in there and then a load cell and a digital readout. And the trainer has the remote for the winch. So we can control, it's isokinetic. So we can control the speed and the direction, everything. And the person, the member client is grabbing the handles and they have one job, just pull as hard as you can the whole time. And this is kind of like a time hack on top of a time hack because this particular machine will fatigue you out completely in 1 minute instead of 2 to 3, because it's like a 1 rep max for the entire 1 minute where there's no rest in between reps. And you're just pulling as hard as you can, but it automatically adjusts throughout the range. So you don't have to have like a Nautilus cam or an adjustment because through the entire range, you're just pulling as hard as you can. And then the trainer controls the winch and the speed, and they can start and stop. And then if the form is starting to deteriorate, they just stop, but the person's still pulling. And then while they're doing that, it's isometric pull, they're correcting their form, and then they can start up again and we can continue. So and because of that, they're putting so much load on the bone that it causes that density change. Because that's what you're really looking for, is either through lots of repetitions or from a really hard pull. Even isometrics can work if you can push hard enough. And what you're essentially doing is the tendon is pulling on the bone. And in some cases, you're actually bending the bone a little bit if you can pull really hard. And any stress on the bone, whether it's just the tendon attachment point or the bone bending or even compression, then you are stressing the bone, and bones, as well as all other tissues, are always breaking down in the body and rebuilding. So if we're causing that stress during this process, then the bone is, while it's breaking down, then it's going to rebuild different because we have put that stress on it. Whether it's compression or lateral or rotational, we're stressing it. And that's the key to bone density. Of course, nutrition is the other half of it. But as far as the stress goes, that's how you get denser bones.
And that, under that method, I mean, the bone is literally, with that winch you're describing, under constant tension.
Yeah. Right. So it's a huge load. And that's why no one can stand it for more than a minute, because even me, because if you're really pushing and pulling or whatever your exercise you're doing is 100% intensity as hard as you can, a minute is tops, is the most anybody could ever do.
So tell us a little bit about more of the specifics of your program. How do people sign up? Do you guys do virtual training? Go into that.
Yeah. So we have the Kirkland Club and people come there. We also do online training people all around the world. So we'll train our members if they're traveling, or we'll train somebody just exclusively as an online client because they don't live around Kirkland. And those are the two main options. And then we also have an app, so people can subscribe to the app. And then there's a video library that they can choose and filter, create their own workouts, or just do a workout. They could just do a 3-minute workout, or they could do, if they only have 3 minutes, or they could do a whole 21-minute preloaded workout, or make their own. And so those are the main 3 ways. And then the online training is done through FaceTime if they have an iPhone or an Apple product, or Teams if it's Android or something, or a PC. So that's the way that we help people.
And tell us some of the price ranges.
So we're about half the price of traditional training, at least in our area, in the Kirkland area. So it's $445 a month plus tax for personal training. And then it's $145 a month for the group training that we only do at the Kirkland Club. Of course, that's not online, but personal training is either in the club or online.
And what's the best way to sign up on your website?
Yeah. So xgym.com. And then people just go there, and there's a like on the homepage over in the right bar, they would see, the free intro pop up. You could just click that, or down to all the way to the bottom of the page. There's a button down there. And then that's just the way that they get the free intro workout, whether it is, try XGym for free, the red one there. Whether they are doing the one to be the Kirkland Club or online, they can choose in that form that they fill out, and that's how they check it out.
Is there any nutritional advice in this training, online training?
Yes. There's two ways people get that. One way is everybody, whether they're a group member or a one-on-one member, gets an automated health course in their email inbox every week. And it talks a lot about all the different things that have to do with health, because that's really our main goal for people is health and health span. So of course, lifespan is going to be increased too, but that's not important unless you're healthy. I mean, if you're going to live to 100, but you're in a wheelchair from 70 to 100, that's not much fun.
No, thank you.
It's really about health and health span that we're concerned with. And so the automated course is focusing on that. And the one-on-one members online and at the Kirkland Club get free nutrition counseling. So that price includes that as well. And also for the Kirkland Club members, they get access to group training, unlimited group training. So there's a lot of perks and benefits that other trainers will charge extra for that we just include in the overall price.
Awesome. So if you had to say what your passion is, PJ, what would that be?
It's just helping people get healthy. And it's just so fun to see people get healthy. And once you have reached optimal health, then everything else falls into place. You're happier, you're more able to have better relationships. You aren't overweight anymore because an optimally healthy body isn't carrying extra weight. But that varies too, because as far as women go, their body fat ranges when they reach optimal health. It could be as low as 15 or it could be as high as 25. Yeah. And for men, it could be as low as 3%. I've seen some men, the outliers, or as high as 15. It doesn't really matter. It's just when you reach that and your genetics have determined, what your optimal health is, then that's where you are. And that's great. So we just help people get to those points.
I love it, PJ. Well, as we wrap this podcast up, we'll go ahead and stream your website again and tell us what that website is.
xgym.com, xgym.com.
Awesome. So PJ, you've helped us realize our goal of this podcast, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much for doing that.
Right on. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you. PJ, that was great. Thank you.